Hi again everyone, Loz here with the fourth video in my French learning series. This time I haven't left it months before making a follow-up, and I'm going to continue making regular updates and to talk about how I feel my level is changing month on month. This month I managed to successfully merge the two methods I was using before. I've not spent the whole time sentence mining with Anki, and I've also not spent the entire time just watching French streams on Twitch, but I've rather done a mix of the two this time. I've also been better at recording how much time I've spent on doing things in French, and while it's not 100% accurate, it should give a better picture of what I've done this month. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to make a quick clarification on my last video. I mentioned briefly that MIA had now rebranded to Refold. However, while previously the Discord was Patreon only, with Refold, the Discord is fully available free of charge, and better than that, there are now actually dedicated Discords for each language. Obviously, I can only comment on the one for French, but the people there are very friendly, and I've found lots of cool resources already, and I think it's well worth joining for anyone that's watching the video. This is the site here. I'll put a link to the site in the description below. The first thing I wanted to talk about are some small changes that I've made to my workflow to make it a little bit more efficient. Previously, when I came across an I+1 word that I wanted to add to Anki, I would copy it and then do a shortcut combination which would open up several tabs for the monolingual dictionary, the bilingual dictionary, Forvo, etc. However, this was a bit of a pain, and I would have to manually close all the tabs each time. Oftentimes I would never even look at anything outside the monolingual dictionary, making all the other tabs unnecessary. Also, I would have to painstakingly copy the different sections of the definition from the site. It wasn't too bad, but this act of having to kind of copy the different sections made it tedious very quickly. So instead, what I've done is I've created a little web server, and all this does is it essentially scrapes all the relevant information from the dictionaries, and with one button press I can copy the definition and paste it into Anki. It's not perfect, and I spent maybe 2 to 3 hours making this, and I didn't spend any time on the formatting or anything, so it could be a lot better, but for my needs it works great, and it makes cards significantly easier now. So I've still got the same hotkey set up, so what I've done here is I've got this word. If I copy it, do the hotkey thing, it opens up this new page on my web server, and then you can see I've got all these, what I would have as different tabs, I've got them as different sections, and all this information has been scraped automatically. If I don't want that, I can click it and hide it. If I want to see the bilingual definition, I can see that. If I want to hear a native pronunciation, I can do this. And then if I want to learn more, I can click these, and these will open up a separate page for if I want to learn more. So it just makes things much easier. And then obviously, like if I want to put this on a card, I just click copy, and it automatically copies everything, and then I can just paste it. So rather than having to go on the tab and click and copy, I can just click this button, and I've got the definition straight away. So this has improved things dramatically to how I was doing it before. Just a quick note for any members of the MIA or Refold community that might be watching. I know this is essentially the LingQ dictionary add-on, which is a link that I'll put in the description. But for me, this works better. From what I can tell, the LingQ dictionary add-on only has one monolingual dictionary available, and they're in the JSON format, so it's not that easy to add new ones. Also, they only update on infrequent release cycles, and since I've already updated my Anki past their most recent release cycle, I missed out, and that's actually the main reason why I wanted to create my own thing, because it just wasn't available for the version of Anki that I had. I also like the fact that I've got more control, and if I want to spend more time on this, I can effectively make it do whatever I want. I can make it scrape from any site I want, automatically generate the cards, etc. And there's no reliance on the version of Anki, so I can update Anki whenever I want. This month I've tried to keep a rough kind of schedule, which I've outlined here. This is only approximate, and the order is subject to change each day, but this is roughly how I set out my day in terms of language learning. I typically spend about 30 minutes to an hour in bed every morning, browsing things like Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, etc., in a mix of French and English. Because my phone's in French, Twitter defaults to showing me all the French tweets first, so it's difficult for me to go into English on Twitter if I'm just browsing. After that, I get some breakfast, and this is where I do my Anki reviews for the day. The earlier I do my Anki reviews, the better. Although now they take less than 20 minutes, typically, it's not that onerous. I usually have something like France24 or a Twitch channel, YouTube video on in the background for about an hour. After this is where things get a little more flexible, but I'll do some combination of books, podcasts, YouTube, videos, and LingQ for about 3 hours. With lunch, I normally take a break from French, but what I've done on a few days this month that I really like is that I'll go for a long 1.5 hour walk with a podcast on. This month it was Fan du Game. This means that I'm getting out and getting some fresh air and exercise, but also rather than just having my mind wander on random things while I'm out walking, I can listen to something interesting in French. After this, it's some combination of TV shows, Twitch, YouTube, LingQ, etc. And I'll normally do this with dinner as well. About 3 hours or so before bed, I typically just wind down and I don't do any French here. I'm not that big on passive listening. I do it occasionally, but most of the time I'm actively listening while doing other things, like eating, walking, playing chess, things like that. I thought it might be nice this month to make a little graphic breaking down what I've done each month, so I hashed this up quickly in Python. I've been thinking about tracking everything that I do in an Excel document, presenting that in more of like a report kind of format each month. So I may do that next month, but we'll see how much effort it is to set up and to track everything that I'm doing each time. But for this month, you can see here that Twitch dominates quite a lot of the content I've been consuming this month. Twitch is great because it's mostly listening, but I also get a lot of reading practice if I want to take part in the chat. There's live TV, YouTube, and podcasts are also mostly listening, with everything else being reading, as I have French subtitles on with the TV shows and films at the moment. So you can see it's roughly a 50-50 split for listening and reading. One of the big things that I did this month is finish the first Harry Potter book, which I'll talk about more in the LingQ section. After reading this book, I also watched a film, and it was really cool that I could understand close to 100%. Obviously, because the film takes most of its lines directly from the book, and I'd literally just finished the book before watching. What was a nice bonus was the fact that the voice acting I actually preferred to the original. So I'm sorry if I upset any die-hard Potter fans here, but it's no secret that the acting in the Harry Potter films from the main cast isn't the best, especially in the first few films, which is to be expected since they were so young, but it's nice because they really smashed it with the French voice acting, and it makes the film much better than I remember it being in English. Finally, I might have alluded to this in my last update video, and this ties into the learning by necessity, which I talked about before, but I've gotten really into chess this month, and I've been using French as a kind of way to learn chess. Of course, most of the time I'm learning in English because it's just faster, but there's some really good YouTube channels on chess strategy, and also quite a few articles written in French for learning chess. Since I know all of the piece names and all the specific terms and stuff in French, it's actually pretty easy to consume. And it feels like I'm killing two birds with one stone when I do this chess study in French. I also find I learn the words much easier since they're actually serving a purpose, which in this case is teaching me French. For the Anki Stats, the first thing I'll mention that I forgot last month is that I suspended all the cards I made from the textbook where I first started. This is why there was a big batch of suspended cards in my stats. The reason being that they weren't adding any value, and it was quite jarring to have a card come up that seemed weirdly written and then has a translation written on the back, so I suspended them, and Anki has been completely painless since then. I've realised that trying to stick to a goal or have some arbitrary number of cards that I add every day seems a little pointless. I've just been adding cards ad hoc when it's a word that I really want to learn, or I think that it would be really useful. Outside of that, I don't make many cards anymore in Anki. It's more of a supplement to my learning rather than being the main core of the method. I'm slowly increasing the number of monolingual cards I'm making as well, which is great. So if I go up to here and we look at monolingual, you can see I've got 227 to 589, so it's getting there. Probably in a few months it'll catch up to the number of bilingual cards I've got. I'd say probably 75% of the cards I make now are monolingual. The main issue is with certain words, the monolingual definition isn't helpful at all. It'll either use the word itself to describe the word, or it'll be too abstract to where one word in English captures the meaning much more succinctly. For a lot of nouns, I don't bother as well, because it's just an object. Quite often I'll just put a picture of the object in there. I'm not gaining anything from having it described in French, unless of course there's an alternative meaning or it's used in a different way. In that way, I make a value judgment every time and pick whichever definition is going to be the most useful to me in the long term, which turns out to usually be the monolingual definition. I've noticed while making cards that the harder the content, the less cards I make. For example, Harry Potter is probably the most difficult content that I've mined this month, as it contains a lot of book-only words and kind of fancy descriptive words, and therefore I don't often make cards from them because I'm not that interested in learning a lot of the book words at the moment. Something like Pokemon or the podcast has a much higher bang for buck in terms of making cards, as the content is much more kind of casual, conversational, which is much more important for my learning at the current moment. So if I look at Harry Potter, for example, if I find Harry Potter on my tags, you can see I've only made 116 cards. If I look at in French, I've made 112. If I look at Pokemon, now I've only watched a few episodes of Pokemon, I've already made 17, so I'm getting much more bang for my buck out of these things than like the entire book of Harry Potter, in which I only made 116 cards. The final thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of Anki is the Morphman add-on. When I first started using the add-on, it seemed to be ideal. In theory, I could import tons of content and it would automatically hunt for the I+1 sentences for me. However, in practice, it's only as accurate as the database of words it has available. Because I'm not adding that many cards, and because it counts everything with a space as a separate word, it's been painfully slow at updating the number of words it thinks that I know. The I+1 sentences it finds are almost always I+0, and it really isn't worth the effort of manually going through and adding lots of words just to make it more accurate. Also, I don't know if they change something whenever they release updates, but I was close to 3,000 at the start of the month. But several times after updating throughout the month, I've just randomly lost huge amounts of words, sometimes up to like 100 from the total counter. What would be great would be if I could export all of my known words from LingQ, because the number of known words I have there is much higher, as we'll see in the next section. This would make it much more accurate and I'd get much more use out of Morphman, but unfortunately LingQ doesn't let you do this for whatever reason. I'll still keep using Morphman because there isn't really any point in disabling it, but it probably will go unused for the rest of my time. LingQ is where I've done most of what I would consider actual study for French. As I mentioned, I finished the first Harry Potter book, which at the start was actually quite a struggle, and each lesson of around 2,000 words took me about 1.5 hours to get through. However, towards the second half of the book, this sped up massively, and the last few lessons took me less than half an hour each. Authors tend to have words that I like to use over and over again, and so I got used to the way the book was written. By the end, it wasn't all that challenging anymore. I was still looking up quite a few words each page, but I found quite regularly that I could go many sentences in a row without having any unknown words at all, which is really encouraging for my progress. I also did a few TED Talks and a few French podcasts on LingQ to get the numbers up to where the 100,000 that I've got here that I've read in the last month. As you can see from my stats, I've managed to hit over 10,000 words known, which is a great milestone. And I've actually more than doubled what I had before. You can see I've gained 5,300 here from my reading. However, you have to take this number with a massive grain of salt. LingQ uses a similar kind of lazy method of identifying words as Morphman, and so this gets inflated, especially by words like verbs, which in French can take dozens and dozens of different forms. So I'd say on average it's probably inflated by at least 1.5 times the number of words that I actually know. So the real number of words is probably closer to 6,000, maybe even less than 6,000. My aim with LingQ is to get to the advanced level 1 stage before my membership runs out in October. So I'll just show that now if I can find the page. I think it's on Avatar here. So these are kind of the stages that they define in LingQ based on the number of words. Now, these are arbitrary and they don't really mean much, but I'm kind of setting myself a soft goal of reaching this advanced 1 phase by the time that my subscription runs out in October. I think that might be quite hard to actually hit. I mean, given the progress that I've made this month, you would think, well, if I'm gaining 5,000 words a month, I'll hit it easily in the next few months. However, obviously, like I've come over the curve now. I'm on the other side of the curve, and words are getting much rarer for me to find from this point onwards. So I think it's still a pretty hard thing to hit, even with this inflation. But hopefully once I hit this level, I'll be at a point where I don't need to use LingQ anymore. I don't need to rely on LingQ anymore. And while it's nice having words that you don't know highlighted and having the fast lookups that LingQ provides, it's nowhere near worth the premium membership fee that you have to pay to use LingQ. There's just so many problems with it, and as soon as my membership's up, I'm just going to read the normal way. I'm going to maybe get an ebook reader or just read books, the physical actual book, and that'll be better, and I won't rely on LingQ anymore. Overall, I'm pretty happy with my progress this month. I feel like I'm over the hump now, and that I'm well on my way to progressing towards fluency. Certain things I consume, like Twitch, I have large sections where I understand virtually everything, and then I have other sections where I understand literally nothing. That's just the nature of the beast, being at the intermediate level that I am, and I feel like it's going to be that way for quite a long time. I'm starting to realize now how much more I have to learn, as I'm constantly coming across new words or new usages for words that I already know, and it almost feels like a bottomless pit at times, especially if I try and watch something that's new, that's in a domain that I'm not familiar with, that's very slangy, that doesn't have subtitles. Then oftentimes I can understand virtually nothing. But I think it's valuable to get a reality check from time to time and to keep constantly trying to push my level, because no one ever made progress standing still. In the next month, I plan to read at least 120,000 words in LingQ. I'm going to read the next Harry Potter book for definite, and hopefully the third as well, but we'll have to see if I get burnt out after reading the second book and watching the second film, etc. Other than that, I'm going to continue watching a lot of Twitch, a lot of YouTube, listening to podcasts. Again, like I said, I'm going to try and record exactly what I'm watching in an Excel document, and then kind of automate a report based on that. But we'll see how difficult that is to set up and how that goes. Thank you everyone for watching, especially if you've made it through to the end. Please do leave a comment below if anything I've said resonates with you, or if you have any questions on any of the topics I've discussed. So thanks again, and I'll see you for next month's update.